In a few days, Operation Apocalypse Z kicks off for PlayStation 4, then a week later for Xbox One and PC. We've talked a lot about what we may end up seeing via different teasers, different key art, imagery, and all things considered, but one thing that we talked about but actually wasn't a full complete list is that of the weapons. So today we're going to be breaking down a little bit more about what we know, what's come out since our last discussion of it, with data mined content with the PC update 1.18, what those are, how you can expect them to be introduced, and anything the future may hold in relation to those. So some of this may be amended for information we've already discussed, some of it brand new, and some stuff you may have never heard of. Now, full transparency, this video is based solely for the information, for those of you guys that are interested in knowing what's coming up. As you'll see as we progress through the video, I'm not fond of how things will be introduced. I don't advocate for that. I'm simply letting you know the information at hand. With that out of the way, let's jump right into it. Now, we talked about how our good friend Josh Woocool ended up data mining a lot of things come the PC update for update 1.18 a week ago at this point, but it's actually curious because Reddit user Senescalo actually ended up doing some deep dives into the strings of code, not necessarily the present assets of the game, in which we found out that a lot of this stuff was actually in the game files well before that update 1.18, going all the way back to May 1st. So these things were there from the very beginning in that first initial update for PC for Operation Spectre Rising. It was actually still during that week of exclusivity for PlayStation 4, where PC and Xbox One didn't have the update just yet and that content that dropped, but instead that sort of preparation update that would allow things to go live at that 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time mark was already installed. So that May 1st update actually gave us our first looks at the strings of code, not again those physical assets or those models for those weapons. But out of this, we actually found out that on top of the 4 that we discussed already or mentioned in passing previously, which is where we'll see again that sort of overlap, there's actually 2 more on top of what we already knew of in the game files right now that is not a part of anything that we've discussed previously. We talked about the M16, the Argus shotgun, the crossbow look-alike, which we now know as the Reaver C86, and then also that zombies melee weapon, in which it's now called the backhander. But there's 2 in particular outside of this, another ranged weapon, another melee weapon that we haven't seen at all outside of this post and those strings of code that denote what will be coming here at this. That being the Javelina AA-50 sniper rifle, which is a semi-auto, and also the full stop melee weapon, which is apparently a stop sign. Now, if we add these all together and then we consider that yesterday in the key art imagery for Apocalypse Z, we discovered that we may have an M9 or a 1911 coming at some point as well, denoted by that key art. That's something that we have an odd number of 7 weapons throughout the game known so far that we don't have just yet. Now, personally, I'm thinking that Black Ops 4's Operation 5 and Apocalypse Z is going to have 2 splits like we saw with Spectre Rising, where it was a 35-day split, and then we, after 35 days, rolled into Days of Summer for another 35 days. I think we may end up seeing that, but again, 7 is an odd number given what we've seen so far, and while these things are in the game files, in the game code, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's not going to be more added in. That 1911 or M9, again, if we are correct in that assumption, is a testament to that, because that weapon has not been found in the game files at all, but it looks like it's there in that key art imagery. Something that the Vendetta sniper rifle was, again, another little bit of a testament to that, because we saw the key art for Grand Heist include the Vendetta sniper rifle, but we didn't have it for the entire operation. So it was added in later is the whole gist I'm trying to get across here. And before we jump over into how these things will be added, some quick little interesting information also data mined here from this and the files associated with it is the fact that we can actually see some of the attachments. Now, I'll leave the full post down there in the description below if you guys want to check it out for yourselves, because I'm not going to go through all of the specific information here with this, but the key information is that none of these seem to have operator mods, and some of these actually do have some pretty crazy attachment setups. The M16 probably being the biggest one here at this. We know that's a 3-round burst that's usually pretty good, as is depending on the game, and it has the ability to go up to high caliber 1 and high caliber 2, meaning that your chest shots will do more lethal damage as well, probably making that a 1 burst all around. Then things like the Javelina AA-50 sniper also have high cal 1 and 2, so maybe some things to keep an eye out for here in terms of weapons that will probably be pretty nuts to go up against, or if you are lucky enough to even yield it. That said, let's talk about how they're introduced, because this is where we start to turn away from, wow, that kind of sounds pretty cool, to, wow, that's not really cool. Now, of course, I think a lot of these will probably follow the similar patterns that we saw introduced with Days of Summer. The first split of Spectre Rising threw up a few red flags in terms of how the contraband stream was handled, but then it all, of course, made sense with Days of Summer, as we saw that no longer were we getting really any weaponry or anything worthwhile in the tiers, but instead what players wanted were thrown into reserves and supply drops. And I think that, unfortunately, that's not going to change at all. I think this is going to be a very similar situation to how introductions are working in terms of Days of Summer. Truthfully, I don't see the MTX system getting any better for Black Ops 4, admittedly. Through 9 months of the game's life cycle, with missteps being made all the way up until this last operation and in big numbers, I don't dare say I don't think that it can't get any worse, because as soon as I say that, probably will. But with how much doubling down and tripling down on the system that nobody really likes having been happening, with 3 months left in the game's life cycle, what makes anything get any better? I don't see that happening, and now it kind of just, in my opinion, comes down to that Judge Judy gif where she's banging the desk looking at her watch. And we're kind of like, hey, Modern Warfare, when you get in here, so we got a fresh start. So that hopefully we don't see something as egregious and as anti-consumer as Black Ops 4 has turned into. So in that sense, I don't see the system at hand changing, which is honestly a bummer, but given the fact that personally, I know that a lot of people may not feel the same way, and that's totally fine. I still enjoy the core game. The MTX system and everything like that, nope. But Blackout I still have a ton of fun with. MP I can jump on from time to time. Specialists aren't really my jam, but I can still enjoy it for what it's worth. But what I would imagine we end up getting, now seeing that we have the Javelina and that perhaps 1911 and M9, plus also that full stop melee weapon, I would imagine that we have some of these in reserves. Things like the M16, the Argus, the Reaver, that full stop maybe, and that backhander melee weapon in reserves right off the bat for Apocalypse Z, a weapon or an ultra weapon bribe at tier 25 of the new tier system, and then either the Javelina or the 1911, or maybe even, I'd be cool with the M16 being at tier 50, but one of those weapons out of the bunch being that tier 50, a weapon bribe at 25, some of them, if not all, added in reserves, depending on if they want to break this up via split. Again, we have 7 weapons here out of this list that we know of right now, which is much more than we've seen introduced at any other point given in Black Ops 4. This past operation with Days of Summer, that split introduced the most number of weapons that we had, which outside of the Grav was 5. We had the Vendetta in tiers, and then we had the Peacekeeper, the Locust, the Ballistic Knife, as well as the S6 Stingray in reserves. So 7 may be a little bit too many to introduce at one time, or at least from a managerial perspective. I know that I'd be all for if we had 7 weapons in tiers, though that would never happen. I'd be all for that. 7 new weapons dropping all at once for the player like that, but especially given how we see weapons introduced now, wouldn't be for it. But that also means that we may end up seeing some of these broken up so that not all of them are introduced within the first split, but some within that second if there is one. So it really all comes down to a matter of time to seeing exactly how, but think Days of Summer, that's where I'm kind of going along the lines of and anticipating these to be introduced in that fashion. Though one thing that is kind of a consolation is that it has been said that we will be getting more ultra weapon bribes and more confirmed by Treyarch as being earnable. Now, as for what that means in particular, whether that means we'll have a more frequent basis of these mini streams happening like we have right now with 15 tiers, and at the end of that 15th tier, you end up getting an ultra weapon bribe, whether that only means that the new operation tiers introduce those weapon bribes, we don't know exactly, but it is said that more will be coming along the way. And if I were to guess, similar to how the triple plays worked in Black Ops 3, though not entirely the same way because we have it in tiers this time, which instead of winning, say, 100 matches or anything like that, depending on the game mode you end up playing, it could take more or less time. But it really comes down to the playstyle. I also would expect there to be, like how we saw introduced with this Zero bundle, one also in tandem with it, where it's an earnable one that takes a little bit of grinding, or also one that you can pay outright for, like we saw in Black Ops 3. But my biggest thing is that I just hope that for each operation, there's as many ultra weapon bribes to allow players to end up getting those weapons throughout that entire event. My preference would be that they're all grindable, but realistically, you and I both know that's not going to happen, and it's not going to unfold like that. But the big thing comes down to players need to have the opportunity to get those items that they want to get. A 1 in 1,100 plus odd of getting the item you want out of reserves for an hour of your playtime, plus that potential to immediately re-roll into a duplicate, that's not a system I can really get on board with and say, you know what, this is cool. I don't think that's the case at all. So hopefully the best case scenario, we see multiple of these weapons in the tiers, though again, I don't think that's actually the case. Hopefully we get the opportunity to get more ultra weapon bribes, whether that be in the tiers or mini streams like these that we have right now happening more frequently, so that we can capitalize on actually having some fun with these new weapons as they're introduced. But that said, that's the information here at hand with this. Again, not too fond of how we'll probably see these likely introduced, but hey, I'm all for a pleasant surprise. So Treyarch, if this somehow makes it to you guys and there's any sway in this video, how about shaking up our expectations a little bit and, you know, giving something that plays in the favor of the player for once. But anyways, that's the information at hand here. Once again, just simply for that information, keeping you guys up to date with everything there is to know about things coming up within Operation 5 and Apocalypse Z. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Is there any weapon in particular that if you could immediately have 100%, what weapon would you guys want? Personally, seeing what we have, I'd love the M16. As for if that'll happen, your guess is really as good as mine. But anyways, that's where we're gonna wrap it up. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you drop a like down below. And of course, if you're new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Black Ops 4, MP, Blackout, Zombies. We got you covered the best of updates, news, information, tips, tricks, all that good stuff. And with Operation 5 and Apocalypse Z coming right around the corner, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing. If you guys also want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, there's the best place to get connected outside of YouTube. Probably live on both those. If you guys want to strike up conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, that link is down there in the description below. But let's end out. Thank you guys all so much for watching. I'm Untitled Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.